So here's something that's been making waves lately, and honestly, it's the kind of story that makes you realize just how complicated royal life can really be. You've probably heard bits and pieces about Prince Andrew and all the controversy surrounding him, right? Well, what most people don't realize is how deeply this whole situation has affected his daughters. And I'm not just talking about awkward family dinners or uncomfortable media attention. I'm talking about their entire futures being turned upside down. Let me paint you a picture of what's really going on behind those gilded palace gates. Picture this for a moment. You're Princess Beatrice. You've spent the last decade of your life carefully, methodically rebuilding your reputation. You've gone from being that young woman the tabloids loved to mock for her fashion choices to becoming a respected advocate for dyslexia awareness and building a serious career in technology and artificial intelligence. You're married, you're a mother of two, and you've worked incredibly hard to show the world that you're more than just another privileged royal. You've got substance, you've got purpose. And then, out of nowhere, one photograph threatens to unravel everything you've built. Just one image. But not just any image, mind you. We're talking about a leaked photograph that showed your father in a position so compromising, so shocking, that it sent ripples through every corner of Buckingham Palace. The photo allegedly showed Andrew sprawled across the laps of 5 women inside Sandringham House. Now, if you don't know, Sandringham isn't just another building. It's one of the most sacred, private spaces the royal family has. It's where generations have gathered, celebrated, mourned, and found refuge from the public eye. The fact that this image even exists, let alone that it was taken in such a hallowed place, raises some seriously uncomfortable questions. Questions about access, about trust, about what was really happening behind closed doors. And suddenly, all those years Beatrice spent rebuilding her image? They're hanging by a thread. Now here's where it gets even more complicated. We're not just talking about reputation damage here. We're talking about money. Real money. Reports suggest that around £30 million, money that was expected to eventually go to Beatrice and her sister Eugenie, has essentially vanished. Gone. Slipped away because of their father's actions and the legal settlements that followed. £30 million. That's not pocket change even for royals, but let's rewind a bit and talk about how we got here, because this didn't happen overnight. This has been a slow-motion train wreck that's been unfolding for years. It all really started gaining serious momentum back in 2019 when Andrew sat down for that now infamous interview with Emily Maitlis on BBC Newsnight. You remember that one? If you don't trust me, it's worth looking up just to understand how badly an interview can go. He was trying to explain his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, trying to put people's minds at ease, trying to save his reputation. Instead, he made everything infinitely worse. Viewers weren't reassured. They were horrified. The things he said, the way he defended himself, the bizarre details he offered up, like claiming he couldn't sweat or that he was at Pizza Express on a particular night, it all just made him look guilty, even if that wasn't the intention. That interview marked the beginning of his complete unraveling as a public figure. Fast forward to 2022, and Andrew reached a civil settlement. The details were kept quiet, but the damage was done. By October of 2025, he'd reportedly surrendered his remaining royal titles. Most people thought that was rock bottom, that things couldn't possibly get any worse for him or his family. But then December 2025 rolled around, and the United States Department of Justice released a new batch of photographs from the Jeffrey Epstein files. And among those images was the one I mentioned earlier, the one taken at Sandringham. Royal experts immediately sounded the alarm. They started sending very clear, very stern warnings to Princess Beatrice. The message? Your loyalty to your father, while admirable, could destroy everything you've worked for. Your career, your reputation, your future within the monarchy itself. Everything is at risk if you don't create some distance. And here's the thing that makes this so heartbreaking. Beatrice isn't some naive young woman who doesn't understand what's at stake. She's 37 years old. She's intelligent, accomplished, and fully aware of the consequences her choices might have. But she's also a daughter who loves her father. And that love, that loyalty, it's not something you can just turn off like a switch. no matter how much damage it might cause you. Just 4 days after Andrew formally gave up his royal titles, Beatrice was spotted driving into Royal Lodge in Windsor to visit him. It wasn't a secret visit. She wasn't trying to hide. To many people watching, this was her way of saying, "I don't care what the world thinks. This is my father, and I'm not abandoning him." That takes courage, whether you agree with the choice or not. But then came the moment that really caught everyone's attention. Late January of this year, Beatrice was photographed riding horses through Home Park at Windsor Castle with her father and her 4-year-old daughter, Sienna. They spent more than 45 minutes together, just the three of them, moving calmly through the park as if the entire world wasn't tea, watching and judging every second of it. Now, according to people close to the family, this wasn't just a casual horseback ride. This was Beatrice's way of letting her daughter create memories with her grandfather before everything changes. Because here's what's happening behind the scenes. Andrew is reportedly preparing to be quietly exiled to some remote property on the Sandringham estate, far away from public view. And by February, he's facing eviction from Royal Lodge, that sprawling 30-room mansion he's called home for years. Think about that for a second. Royal Lodge isn't just a house, it's massive. It's the kind of place where Andrew and his ex-wife Sarah Ferguson could live separately under the same roof without constantly running into each other. The lease was allegedly signed back in 2003 for just £1 million and an annual rent of, get this, 1 peppercorn if demanded. Yes, you heard that right, a single peppercorn. But now that lease is apparently being revoked, and the property will go back to the Crown estate. Andrew loses his home, and more important, for Beatrice and Eugenie, they lose a significant piece of their expected inheritance. This whole situation has put enormous strain on the relationship between the two sisters, too. Beatrice and Eugenie used to be a united front. You'd see them together at events, supporting each other, presenting this image of sisterly solidarity. But now, that unity seems to have cracked. Sources claim that Eugenie, who's now 35, has completely cut their father off. She's done. She's made the decision that protecting her own family and reputation is more important than maintaining a relationship with someone whose scandal could drag her down. Beatrice reportedly sees this as cold and unfair. She believes that family loyalty should come first, scandal or no scandal. And this fundamental disagreement has led to heated arguments between the sisters. Royal expert Afua Hagen described Eugenie's choice as necessary self-preservation, a way to protect her own children and future from being tainted by association. But to Beatrice, it probably feels like betrayal, like her sister is abandoning their father when he needs them most. Christmas of 2025 really highlighted just how fractured this family has become. Both Beatrice and Eugenie attended the traditional Christmas Day walk at Sandringham, maintaining their royal duties and public appearances. But their parents? Nowhere to be seen. Andrew and Sarah Ferguson didn't attend, breaking decades of tradition, and Royal Lodge itself stood almost eerily quiet, without the usual festive decorations and lights. One commentator even compared Andrew to the Grinch, suggesting that all the joy had been sucked out of the place, laced by heavy silence and shame. Behind closed doors, people close to Beatrice say she's struggling, really struggling. She reportedly chose to go skiing over the holidays instead of attending certain royal events because she couldn't face the pressure of having to choose between her father and the institution she was born into. Can you imagine being put in that position? Having to weigh your love for your parent against your duty to the crown and your own self-preservation. And here's something really important to remember throughout all of this. Beatrice and Eugenie are completely innocent. They had nothing to do with their father's actions. They weren't involved in any of his decisions, his friendships, his alleged wrongdoing, zero involvement. Yet their lives have been completely upended by his choices. That's the brutal reality of guilt by association, especially when you're in the public eye. Now there's another layer to this whole mess that involves King Charles himself, and it's raising some eyebrows. His handling of the situation during Christmas was criticized by quite a few commentators who called it tone-deaf. Think about it. He placed Beatrice and Eugenie front and center during that Christmas Day walkabout right when their father's humiliation was dominating every headline. Some people interpreted this as strategic, like he was moving them around on a chessboard, using them for optics rather than considering their emotional well-being. But there's also talk of a secret agreement between Charles and Andrew. According to sources, and take this with a grain of salt because we can't verify it completely, Andrew agreed to leave Royal Lodge only after securing a promise that his daughters would remain fully welcome in the royal fold. The deal supposedly ensures that while Sarah Ferguson might lose her title, the princesses would be protected from their parents' scandals. Essentially, the children get to keep their standing even as the adults bear the consequences. If that's true, it's a fascinating piece of negotiation. Andrew using his daughter's futures as leverage to secure better terms for his departure. And Charles agreeing to it because, let's be honest, cutting out two perfectly innocent princesses would create its own PR nightmare. But protection doesn't mean comfort. Both sisters are still caught in an impossible situation, trying to forge independent careers and personal lives while being tethered to a royal identity that thrusts them into the spotlight whenever it's convenient for the institution. Vanity Fair's royal correspondent Katie Nicholl described Beatrice and Eugenie as the most unfortunate victims in all of this, quietly enduring the consequences of actions they had no part in while trying to maintain some shred of dignity. They're trying to carry on with their lives, their careers, their families, all while clinging to whatever thread of connection they can maintain with the royal family. It's exhausting just thinking about it. Let's talk about the money situation in more detail because it's absolutely staggering. That £30 million I mentioned earlier, that's not just a symbolic loss. That's real wealth that would have provided security, stability, and options for Beatrice and Eugenie's futures. And at the center of it all is Royal Lodge. For years, that property was seen as a cornerstone of what the York daughters would eventually inherit. It had history, prestige, and significant monetary value. But with Andrew's title stripped and his lease being revoked, that property goes back to the crown. The sisters lose not just a potential home, but a massive financial asset. And beyond Royal Lodge, there are other financial implications tied to inheritance expectations. Members of the royal family typically rely on a mix of personal wealth, trust funds, and properties under the crown estate. With Andrew's legal settlements, including the one with Virginia Giuffre, much of that expected wealth has been depleted or redirected. Reports of losses upward of £30 million illustrate just how deeply one family member's scandal can destabilize everyone else's financial security. And these aren't just monetary losses, they carry reputational weight too. For public figures like Beatrice and Eugenie, financial independence is closely tied to credibility. Investors, business partners, and sponsors all consider both wealth and image when deciding whether to work with high-profile individuals. A tarnished inheritance could undermine the sisters' positions in business ventures or philanthropic initiatives. It makes the scandal's impact both personal and professional. It affects not just their bank accounts, but their ability to be taken seriously in their chosen fields. And that's why their response to these challenges has been so strategic. They're both actively pursuing careers that build credibility separate from their father's legacy. Beatrice has focused on technology and artificial intelligence consulting, carving out a niche where she's recognized for expertise rather than just her royal title. Eugenie has concentrated on art and philanthropy, carefully managing her public appearances and choosing projects that align with her values. The loss of Royal Lodge and the associated wealth makes these independent efforts even more critical. They can't just coast on inherited privilege anymore. They have to actively secure their financial futures through work, strategy, and calculated public engagement. The Crown Estate's reclamation of Royal Lodge also serves as a harsh reminder about royal property and inheritance. Nothing is guaranteed. Even proximity to royalty doesn't shield you from financial vulnerability when a family member's actions compromise trust or public perception. For Beatrice and Eugenie, this is a wake-up call that legacy, finances, and personal reputation are now intertwined more tightly than ever before. Now let's address the elephant in the room, their royal titles. Unlike Andrew, who gave up his dukedom and military affiliations, Beatrice and Eugenie still hold their princess titles and the York designation. At first glance, this seems protective, like the monarchy is shielding them from the worst of the fallout. But it's way more complicated than that. Royal titles aren't just fancy names, they come with ceremonial duties, public visibility, and social influence. For the sisters, keeping their titles allows them to participate in select royal events, charitable initiatives, and public engagements. It gives them a platform most people could never access. But here's the catch. These privileges also chain them to a legacy that's now deeply complicated by scandal. Every public appearance, every social media post, every charitable project gets measured against the backdrop of their father's controversies. They have to balance visibility with extreme caution, knowing that one wrong move could be interpreted as supporting their father, or worse, being complicit in some way. The monarchy itself is walking a tightrope here. King Charles and his advisors have reportedly structured things so the sisters can continue their royal roles while creating distance from Andrew's personal failures. It's a deliberate strategy to protect both the institution and the individuals, acknowledging that Beatrice and Eugenie aren't responsible for their father's actions, while also signaling some level of accountability. For the sisters, this creates both leverage and vulnerability. Beatrice has actively embraced her royal duties alongside her professional work, carefully building a public image rooted in philanthropy, technology, and family values. Eugenie has been more selective, often prioritizing private initiatives and business ventures over high-profile royal appearances. Both approaches show they understand that their titles are assets, but assets that need incredibly careful management in this climate of intense scrutiny. Public perception adds yet another complicated layer. Titles don't automatically earn you goodwill, especially when scandal touches the broader family. Every appearance at a royal gathering or charitable event invites immediate speculation. Is Beatrice showing loyalty or exploiting privilege? Is Eugenie's distance a calculated business move or a genuine personal choice? The media has been quick to highlight both praise and criticism, underscoring just how precarious the sisters' position really is. Royal experts note that Beatrice and Eugenie now function as symbols of a larger institutional balancing act. Their titles offer protection, but also massive exposure. Keeping them allows some continuity and prevents the monarchy from looking like it's completely abandoning innocent family members. But it also makes them highly visible targets for commentary about loyalty, propriety, and public responsibility. Every decision, from attending official events to managing family relationships, gets scrutinized and analyzed to death. So their titles provide a shield of legitimacy, sure. But they also amplify the pressure to navigate public opinion, family expectations, and personal ambition all at the same time. It's like walking a tightrope while juggling flaming torches and everyone's watching, waiting for you to slip up. Let me talk about the psychological toll of all this, because I think it's something we don't discuss enough. The concept of guilt by association has become an inescapable reality for these women. The public, conditioned to view royals as both symbols and individuals, often blurs the lines between personal responsibility and family connection. Every media report involving Beatrice or Eugenie gets instantly measured against Andrew's controversies, forcing them to constantly navigate this treacherous landscape of perception. Royal commentators frequently point out the impossible balancing act required of them. Beatrice's visible loyalty, spending time at Royal Lodge, riding horses with her father and daughter, has drawn admiration from some people who respect her dedication to family, but others see it as dangerously risky, arguing that her reputation is vulnerable to the same scrutiny that destroyed Andrew's. Eugenie's strategic distance, on the other hand, protects her immediate family and public image, but carries its own emotional costs and invites accusations of coldness. The media scrutiny intensifies all of this pressure exponentially. Every movement, statement, or professional decision gets dissected by journalists, social media commentators, and self-proclaimed royal experts. Tabloid headlines blow up minor missteps while public forums endlessly debate the ethics of their choices. Psychologists who study the impact of high-profile scrutiny note that constant judgment heightens anxiety, exacerbates stress, and creates persistent feelings of vulnerability. For Beatrice and Eugenie, the mental toll is compounded by how intimate the coverage is. Family disputes, holiday absences, private interactions, they're all presented as public spectacle. The boundary between personal life and public persona gets completely eroded. Beatrice has reportedly skipped certain royal gatherings specifically to protect herself from media pressure, choosing instead private family time or professional engagements where she has more control. Eugenie's focus on selective appearances and international projects reflects a conscious effort to limit exposure and shield both her mental health and that of her children. Their experiences illuminate some broader truths about public life in our digital age. Reputation is incredibly fragile, and even complete innocence doesn't guarantee protection from guilt by association. Mental health and personal relationships suffer deeply when scrutiny becomes relentless. It highlights the hidden human cost behind all the glamour and privilege we associate with royalty. So where does this leave them? Well, amid all this turbulence, there's actually an opportunity, a chance to redefine themselves, rebuild their careers, and craft public personas that stand completely independent of family controversy. Beatrice has already shown a real capacity for reinvention. Remember, she was once dismissed as just a party princess. But she methodically built a career in technology and business consulting, specializing in AI and innovation. Her professional accomplishments have earned her credibility outside royal circles, allowing her to be recognized for expertise rather than just her last name. Combined with her philanthropic work, especially around dyslexia awareness, Beatrice has created a public image of substance, intelligence, and genuine compassion. Now she faces the challenge of continuing to expand these achievements while navigating the storm of public perception, ensuring her identity becomes increasingly defined by merit rather than association. Eugenie has taken a complementary but distinct path, focusing on art, philanthropy, and carefully chosen public engagements. She's cultivated a reputation for independence and intentionality. By creating more distance between herself and royal high society, she's prioritized family life and professional pursuits that reflect her personal values. This strategy gives her greater control over her public image, minimizing exposure to scandal while still benefiting from her royal heritage. Public perception remains a persistent challenge for both of them. The media's tendency to conflate family association with personal responsibility forces them to carefully manage every aspect of their visibility. But by prioritizing meaningful work, engaging in genuine philanthropic causes, and thoughtfully selecting professional collaborations, they can gradually shift the narrative. They can move the focus from their father's controversies to their own accomplishments. Strategic partnerships and professional endeavors will be absolutely critical going forward. Both sisters have demonstrated the ability to leverage their royal background to access opportunities, but they've balanced that privilege with real, tangible contributions that highlight skill and dedication. Whether through technology consulting, art initiatives, or charitable projects, Beatrice and Eugenie can build a portfolio of work that strengthens their personal brands while ensuring independence from the scandals surrounding their father. Ultimately, their future success hinges on resilience, smart decision-making, and the ability to navigate intense public scrutiny while staying true to their individual goals. They're at a genuine crossroads where the choices they make right now will determine whether they end up defined by scandal or by personal achievement. And honestly, that's a lot of pressure for anyone to handle, royal or not. Think about everything we've covered here. The financial losses, the family fractures, the impossible choices between loyalty and self-preservation. The constant media scrutiny, the psychological toll, the strategic maneuvering required just to maintain some semblance of a normal life. These are real people dealing with real consequences of someone else's actions. They're trying to protect their children, build meaningful careers, maintain dignity, and somehow find a path forward that doesn't completely destroy everything they've worked for. So, here's what I want you to think about. If you were in Princess Beatrice's position, what would you do? Would you stand by your father no matter the cost to your own future, or would you create distance to protect yourself and your children? There's no easy answer here, and honestly, I don't think there's a right answer either. It's one of those situations where every choice comes with serious consequences, and you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. What's fascinating to me is how this whole situation reveals the reality behind the fairy tale. We grow up seeing royalty as this glamorous, privileged existence where everything's handed to you on a silver platter, but stories like this show you the other side. The side where your family's mistakes become your burden. Where your title is both a blessing and a curse. Where £30 million can disappear because of decisions you had nothing to do with. Where loving your father could cost you everything you've built. Beatrice and Eugenie are navigating something most of us will never have to face. At least not on this scale. Not with the entire world watching and judging every move. And regardless of what you think about royalty in general, about privilege, about whether these institutions should even exist in the modern world, you have to acknowledge the human element here. These are daughters dealing with their father's downfall, sisters whose relationship is fracturing under pressure, mothers trying to protect their children from scandal, women working to build independent identities in a system that wants to define them by birth and association. The next few months are going to be crucial. As Andrew's eviction from Royal Lodge approaches, as the financial implications become even clearer, as media attention continues to intensify, Beatrice and Eugenie will have to make some tough decisions. Will they present a united front? Will Eugenie maintain her distance while Beatrice continues her visible support? How will they manage their public roles while protecting their private lives? Can they successfully rebuild their reputations despite the shadow hanging over their family? These aren't just questions for gossip magazines and royal watchers. They're genuine dilemmas with real consequences for real people. And honestly, I think we're all watching to see how this unfolds because it touches on universal themes we can all relate to. Family loyalty versus self-interest. The sins of the father affecting the children. The struggle to build your own identity when you're defined by who you're related to. The price of privilege and what it really costs. One thing's for certain. Whatever happens next, Beatrice and Eugenie's story isn't over. They're still young, still building their lives and careers, still fighting to carve out space for themselves in a world that wants to reduce them to footnotes in their father's scandal. Whether they succeed or not will depend on their choices, their resilience, and maybe a little bit of luck. So I want to hear from you. What's your take on all of this? Do you think Beatrice is being admirably loyal or dangerously naive? Is Eugenie smart to create distance or cold for cutting off her father? Should King Charles do more to protect them, or is HE handling it appropriately? And more broadly, what do you think about the whole concept of guilt by association? Is it fair that these women are paying such a high price for someone else's actions? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Let's have a real conversation about this because I think it raises some important questions about family, loyalty, reputation, and how we judge people in the public eye. And hey, if you found this deep dive valuable, if you appreciated getting beyond the surface-level headlines to understand what's really happening here, do me a favor. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, share this with someone who's interested in these kinds of stories. It really helps us continue creating this kind of content that goes deeper than just the gossip and sensationalism. Because at the end of the day, these stories matter. Not because we're obsessed with royalty or celebrity drama, but because they reveal truths about human nature, family dynamics, institutional power, and the complicated reality of living in the public eye. Beatrice and Eugenie's struggle is ultimately about something we can all understand. The challenge of moving forward when the past keeps pulling you back. The difficulty of building your own legacy when you're born into someone else's. And the courage it takes to keep going when the whole world is watching, waiting to see if you'll succeed or fail,